I've lived in the same house my whole life. It's a nice little ranch-style house with just enough room for my family and pets. We're a small family of 4 and I'm the youngest. My parents aren't very strict. They let my brother and I stay out late and play with the other kids in our nice, safe neighborhood. There was only one thing I never understood. Even before I could form memories, my parents always told me something weird. They would say every night before bed, if you wake up past 1:37 a.m., go back to sleep. Ignore the cracking and close your eyes. Don't leave your room and never crack your knuckles. We will know if you do. It was the only rule in the house that I could never forget and never break, but as I got older, I just thought it was some dumb thing they told me to make me stop fidgeting at night. I had bad sleep apnea as a kid and never really got good sleep even as I got older. I have a lot of anxiety and paranoia. Anyways, I'm 17 now and I honestly never really think about it anymore. I used to get curious as a kid, but my parents would always get weird about it and just tell me not to do it. It's all they ever begged me not to do. It's never been a big deal for me, so I never made a big fuss about it. There were a few occasions where I couldn't sleep and started fidgeting and accidentally pop a knuckle. Just one, but every time it happened I'd hear a strange noise, like some weird cracking in the hallways. It'd scare me so bad as a kid, but as I got older I chalked it up to the house being old and worn down. I've never been so wrong in my life. I feel so stupid. I'm 17. I practically never leave my room, so not leaving it past 1:37 was never an issue. I had just finished an essay for my class. My hands were sore and tired and I wasn't even thinking of it. God, I wish I could go back. As soon as I cracked my knuckles, I realized what time it was. 2:04 a.m. I immediately felt a small jolt of electricity course through my body. Swallowing the lump in my throat, I got settled in my bed next to my cat and turned on Community, trying to settle the anxious thoughts racing through my mind. In the background, I kept hearing weird cracking. I thought it might have been the speaker on my old TV, so I listened carefully. It wasn't coming from the speakers, though. It was coming from the hallway. I paused the show and listened, and as I did, I realized my cat was looking at my door with her ears down like she was about to start growling and hissing. But she didn't make a noise. She just looked. The cracking got louder, and I could hear that it was moving. I checked my phone to text and call someone, but it wouldn't turn on. I turned off everything and grabbed my laptop to see if it worked. It did, but there was no service. I couldn't text anyone. That's when I realized the cracks had stopped. It was silent. No crickets, nothing. Suddenly, there was the loudest crash I ever heard in my parents' bedroom. It sounded like something was tearing the walls apart. My cat bounded off the bed and ran away. I think she's hiding in my room somewhere. She's smarter than me. If I had ran at that moment, maybe I wouldn't be stuck in the bathtub writing this as the thing bangs on the door. But I was frozen, staring at my locked door as cold sweat dripped down my back. After what felt like hours of loud cracking and things being thrown, there was silence. I waited for what felt like forever, but there was nothing. I slowly got out of bed and headed towards my door. I never thought I'd desperately beg for a window to suddenly appear in my room, but I found myself doing just that in that moment. As I got to my bedroom door, I slowly reached out to the knob. As my clammy hands touched the cold metal doorknob, I shuddered at the thought of what could be out there. I shook the thoughts from my head and slowly turned the knob, pulling lightly, making sure the door wouldn't creak. When it was open just enough for me to slither my way through, I paused and looked at the pitch-black hallway. My eyes weren't very used to the dark yet, so fear enveloped my whole body, thinking whatever is out there is likely watching me at this very moment. A metallic taste crept into my mouth and hit the back of my tongue as I held my breath. I had to move before it was too late. It was already too late. I just didn't know it yet. I slinked out into the hallway, finally allowing myself to exhale. I tried to look around, but it was no good. It was like looking into a void. As I passed my parents' bedroom, I glanced in fear, wondering what horrors I'd see. I'm so glad they visited my grandparents today, because as I squinted, I saw the state of what used to be their room. The bed was quite literally torn apart. The stuffing was everywhere. Shattered glass glistened across the scratched surface of the hardwood floors. Deep scratches covered the beautiful sky blue walls. I could barely recognize the room. I swallowed the scream I felt creeping up out of my throat as I thought about what it would have been like if my parents were there. Then, that's when I saw it. Under the fucking bed. My eyes had finally got adjusted to the complete lack of light, and part of me wished that they hadn't. My paranoid thoughts couldn't even conjure up the absolutely horrific image. If God existed, even he would run from that treacherous thing. At first, I thought it was a man hiding under the bed because he saw me in the hallway and didn't want to be caught stealing. But oh my God, his fucking limbs. They were bent in every direction but the right fucking way. I held back vomit as I watched in utter horror. He was grinning so wide it wasn't even physically possible. He, or it, had blood dripping on the floor from the bones that protruded from different parts of him. How was he smiling? Fuck, how was he even alive? I watched, frozen as he slowly crawled out from under the bed, bones cracking as he bent in ways that I didn't know were fucking possible. I winced looking at the sharp white bone pop out from under his lifeless skin. I let out a small short squeak as the fucker started doing only what I can describe as a demented crawl run at me before I started sprinting away. I ran into the closest room, the bathroom, the only other room without a fucking window. In my horror, I chose to do the dumbest shit. I slammed the door shut and locked it, and then ran to the toilet to vomit. I shivered in fear as the thing started banging on the door. I don't know what to do. I'm writing this in the bathtub. At least I was smart enough to bring my laptop. I finally got connected to the internet, but it's really slow. I texted everyone I know, but it's too late. Nobody's responding. I don't know what that thing is, and I don't know what to do if it breaks down the door. What's worse, it's not even saying anything. It's just groaning. If the door doesn't break, I'm staying here until my parents get home. If anything happens, I guess I just hope my cat will be okay. It was a dark and stormy night. That's usually how these things kick off, right? A little rain, a little thunder, thrown a creepy face behind rain-streaked glass, and we're all set for a ghost story. But this isn't a ghost story. At least, not in your classic sense. It's a story about you. And me. It's a story about all of us, and the past we bury 6 feet under. The ghosts in the story aren't dead, but they are forgotten. And for memories, that's about as close as dead as you can get. I won't say too much more, but I will warn you, this is a true story. It is not make-believe, it is a story of a storm. And it's a story of how that storm may come for you, just like it came for me. It starts with clouds, not the soft sort, but the kind that are cold and gray. The sort of clouds that bring thunder and lightning, storms and fury. It starts with shadows stretching across your home, your lawn, and neighborhood street signs. It starts like any other storm, but sooner or later you realize something's off. Maybe it's the fact that the thunder doesn't rumble, but groans. Maybe it's the fact that the rain, pitter-pattering onto the drive, is shattering like liquid glass. Or maybe it's just them, the watcher in the gray. You'd be forgiven for thinking they were an aspect of your imagination. Some nightmare dreamed to life. After all, you've only ever seen them in the corner of your eye. Every time you turn to face them, they're gone. Vanished. But it's not that simple, is it? No. Some part of you knows what you saw. Those cold white eyes, that long cloak snapping in the wind. There was a being in your periphery, and deep down you know that this being is more than it seems. Even now, the hairs on the back of your neck begin to stand on end. The blood in your veins pump faster, courting adrenaline as it crashes through your cerebellum, bringing your breath to rush. Danger. Your body is telling you that this storm, that this visitor is dangerous. You'll start with locking your door. Most do. Then you'll pick up your phone, you'll dial the number of your neighbor, of your best friend, or your mother and your father and your boss, and you'll ask them if they can see what you're seeing. If this storm is really as bad as it looks. And they'll all tell you the same thing. What storm? There's nothing else to say. You'll fumble your words. You'll mutter some incoherent excuse, your own mind spinning as it attempts to piece together a situation it cannot fathom. What is happening outside your window? Why can no one else see it? Meanwhile, outside, things are worsening. The rain is falling sideways now, and it's shattering against the side of your house with a symphony of discord. The thunder, once softly groaning, has now began to scream and wail. There are voices in the wind, whistling as they slip inside your house, each of them carrying a separate, desperate plea. End this. Stop running. But none of it matters. Not really. Because the only thing you can truly focus on is them. The watcher in the gray. They're standing at the end of your walkway now, out there in the madness of the storm. They're not vanishing like before, but instead watching you through pale eyes. Their cloak a blanket of shadows, of flapping ravens, each with a worm in their beaks. No. On second glance, not worms, but flesh, intestines. They fly around madly, their eyes bulging as though some parasite has overtaken them, filling them up with rage. Who are you? You think to yourself in horror, and to your surprise, something answers. A friend. Comes a voice not human at all. It slides inside your eardrum like an insect, burrowing into your mind. Each syllable is harsh, grating. Won't you offer me shelter from the storm? You bring your hands to your ears. You'll clench them against your head until you wonder what will give first. Your mind to the sound of this voice, or your skull to the pressure of your grip. Go away, you'll say, but the words will come out soft. Too soft to overcome the cacophony of wind, thunder, and them. A knock will ring out. It'll happen 3 times. Knock, knock, knock. Is anybody home? Vision blurring, you'll rise to your feet, and through the living room window you'll see the watcher on your doorstep. Except, it isn't the watcher. It's you. You're bundled in a jacket, your cheeks bloodied from the shards of rain. Please, let me in. I'm cold and I'm scared. You'll feel a surge of empathy. It'll be accompanied by swirling suspicion, something that grows in the pit of your stomach until it fills up every inch of you. Do not let that thing inside. It means you harm. The words come from somewhere in your subconscious, speaking slowly, deliberately. What's happening? You'll ask these words. But the words won't respond because the universe is cruel, and the forces of good do not linger long in the valleys of evil. Thinking fast, you'll instead reach for the curtains and pull them shut. No longer can you see your twisted doppelganger, but now a new voice reaches to your ears. The sound of a child. Please help me. There's something out here and it's hurting me. And your body will start to act on its own. You'll take a step towards the door, and then another, but you'll stop yourself once your hand touches the knob. It's as though the shock runs through you. For the first time, you'll feel what's out there. It's at once limitless and overflowing, as though the entire universe was carefully erased and replaced with boundless sense of infinity. Return to me. The voice rings throughout your ears, throughout your mind. It scratches against your skull like an insect with razors for feet, picking apart your brain. Something warm drips from the side of your head and you think it might be blood. Who are you? You say aloud, and this time the voice answers plainly. Everything. Your house lurches. The walls begin to shake as the storm erupts into a hurricane, a tempest so powerful it threatens to tear the foundation asunder. Unable to balance, you fall to your stomach and grip the carpet of the floor. Tears leak from your eyes. The living room window shatters, and jagged rain begins to crash around you, tearing apart the couch, the television. Go, you bellow. Just leave me alone. But this is not a thing that takes orders from you. Beyond the rush of wind, stepping through the shattered glass of the living room window, is the Watcher in gray. Their wide eyes bore into you. Their 3 mouths curve upward, smiling as the death throes of thunder announce their entrance. You did not offer me refuge from the storm. I was scared, you'll say, curled onto the floor as shards of rain tear into your skin. I just want you to go away. And the Watcher will reach down and they'll grab you by the base of your neck and lift you like a cat does to a kitten. You might look away. You might pretend that if you just believe that it isn't happening, then it'll all disappear. That you'll wake up. But the truth is far worse. The truth is that this isn't a dream at all. The truth is that the dream has always been your reality. The 9-to-5 job, the Netflix and video games, and the never-ending stream of social media. I cannot be denied. And that's the moment you'll look up. You'll risk looking into the Watcher's eyes, and you'll regret it the moment you do because the thing that you see isn't a monster. Not anymore. It's you. But it's not you from the doorstep. Now it's the bright-eyed child that you forgot you were. The little boy or girl that trusted you to make their dreams come true, and was buried beneath the rubble of hundreds of thousands of self-doubts. Please, they'll say, stop running from me. And suddenly the rain and the thunder of the storm will vanish. Blinking, you'll open your eyes. You'll find yourself laying on the living room carpet, an empty bottle of whiskey in your hand, a heart full of regrets and what-ifs weighing on your mind. Stumbling to your feet, you'll realize that outside the sun is rising. You'll wonder how many phone calls you made in your drunken stupor, How many relationships you strained on the account of your latest bender. Instinctively, you'll reach for your phone. Dopamine. Distraction. That's what you need right now. Something to numb the pain. Take your mind off the mistakes and failures. You'll scroll and you'll see post after post of your friends getting happily married, of old co-workers landing their dream jobs. Must be nice, you mumble, feeling worse than before. Now you'd almost welcome the storm, the nightmare. If nothing else, it would be a change of pace, a way to interrupt this otherwise static life you can't seem to shake, can't seem to break out of. Pressing a hand to the window, you'll remember the vision of it shattering, of the raindrops pelting you like exploding glass. You'll remember the watcher, the strange being that ended up being nothing more than a 10-year-old version of yourself. And in the distance, you might see a shadow cast by a morning cloud. You might hear a sound of rolling thunder. Maybe, if you listen hard enough, you'll hear a voice, an echo of a piece of you long since buried, speaking a truth you wish you had the courage to hear. I still believe in you, and I always have. It began several months back, when me and my best friend Jack were in a car accident. I'd like to say the wreck wasn't my fault, but the alcohol levels would suggest otherwise. We've all made bad choices. Mine just cost me a broken arm, while Jack, who was unbuckled, was sent flying through my windshield. When I had regained my consciousness, I scrambled out of the car to check on my friend, who I was almost certain had just died. However, to my surprise, I found him standing up seemingly unharmed other than a few scrapes. Of course, I'm happy that Jack survived. However, the likelihood that he would be sent flying through my windshield while driving over 60 miles per hour and be unharmed is nothing to overlook. But what was more worrying was the noticeable change in behavior that occurred after this. Jack seemed to be himself, but he seemed to develop a bit of an edge to him. He started getting into fights when we were out and just seemed to have less care for his own well-being. I suppose being in a near-death experience could explain this behavioral change. About 2 weeks ago, he dropped contact with me entirely. It was pretty abrupt, and I couldn't pinpoint no reason for this. If he was mad about the crash, he would have cut ties then, but everything seemed normal besides his sudden change in behavior. And then his number wasn't working at all and he stopped showing up to work. I wouldn't blame anyone for quitting this crappy fast food joint we had worked at, but considering Jack had also dropped out of college, I was suspecting the worst. A few days ago, after getting off at midnight from work, I decided enough was enough. I had to check on him. I pulled up to his apartment building without notice, aiming to catch him there, hopefully alive. Walking up to his door, I took a deep breath and knocked. There was no answer. I knocked again several times before trying the door. To my surprise, it opened. The place was a mess, fast food, trash, and junk strewn about. This wasn't abnormal, but I investigated further. I noticed there were large claw-like marks in the walls and mangled furniture scattered everywhere. Going to check Jack's computer, I found that it too was damaged beyond repair. Just as I was about to leave, I noticed a business card lay on the computer desk. It was for a bar in town, known as Barry Bones. A small logo of a skull wearing a top hat while winking accompanied the name. Despite living here for a better part of a decade, I've never heard of this place. Either way, I took it as my only clue and headed that way. It was a short 8-minute drive from Jack's apartment. I pulled into the mostly empty street as most of the shops along the main street were closed at this hour. It certainly didn't help my nerves to see how isolated I was if something did go wrong. I looked up at the small bar which I've never seen before, which was marked by the same silly skull icon, Barry Bones. What a stupid name. I had parked about a quarter of a mile from the bar and observed for a bit. It didn't seem to be open, just like everything else at this hour. I probably should just go home, I thought to myself. Do I really think Jack would be in some corny bar at 2 in the morning all on his own? Honestly, I'd begun rationalizing with myself, trying to find a way not to enter the building. I had a slight growing feeling of dread creeping upon me, yet I can't place my finger on the source. That's when I saw him. Jack was walking along the sidewalk about a half mile from the building. He looked rough. His stubble had grown out with tired, sunken eyes, and his brown hair in a jagged mess. Yet his face seemed stern and determined. He was wearing a trench coat, jeans, and what appeared to be combat boots. Needless to say, not his typical attire. I continued to hide out in my vehicle, hoping he wouldn't recognize it. Jack must have walked from his apartment here, hence why I beat him to the spot. He approached the building and placed his palm on the front door, as if inspecting it. After a moment, he pushed it open and walked into the bar. Well, I guess it's open, I muttered to myself. But Jack was in there, and I hadn't seen him for weeks. I was not going to leave just because of a bad feeling, when my best friend could be in danger. I worked up the courage, making sure I had my pocket knife on me, and stepped out of the vehicle. Walking up to the building cautiously, I noticed that the bar doors were beaten down and made of wood, like an old Western movie. Pushing them open, I was met by a pretty standard-looking bar with scattered tables and light-up signs of various beer brands on the walls. Although the power was clearly out, and the thick layer of dust told me that no one had put back a drink here in years. Taking steps slowly into the room, I examined for a sign of where Jack may have gone. That's when I heard rustling behind the bar. I slowly crept around the bar and into the kitchen. It was too dark to make out much of the room, but I could see the counter in the center of it with some empty bottles and junk scattered about. I stopped completely as I heard what sounded like huffing and panting from behind the counter. I pulled out my phone slowly and walked around the counter. Turning the flashlight on, I was frozen in terror as the source of the noise turned to look at me. The creature had pale yellowish skin and lanky limbs. Its face was hard to discern besides the gaping mouth full of large rotting incisors which were smeared with what I presumed to be blood. It was fresh, too. As I noticed the body of the creature was hunched over. Not wanting to be the next meal for the abomination, I sprinted out of the kitchen and leaped over the bar. Before I could turn towards the front door, the monster had leaped onto me, pinning me down. Drool fell on my face as I attempted to push it off of me to no avail. The creature opened its mouth yet again, revealing the jagged teeth. I couldn't reach to my pocket knife, so without any other options, I shoved my forearm in its face. I knew one bite to my neck or chest would be enough to kill me, so I figured my forearm would be the better trade. But considering its teeth were the size of kitchen knives, it wouldn't buy me much time. Before it could tear me apart, however, a gunshot rang out and a bullet went through the creature's neck. It turned toward the one who was firing, and so did I. There was Jack, holding some sort of pistol. While I was relieved he was not the corpse the creature was feeding on earlier, I soon realized the monster was now sprinting towards him. I almost rather he had been dead than to have to watch him die right now in front of me. But to my utter shock, as the creature leaped over the counter, Jack raised his leg effortlessly, kicking the creature in the head and sending it flying. He jumped over the counter, running at it before it had even landed, and the creature crashed into the table, smashing it to bits. Jack placed his foot on the creature's neck and pinned it down. He fired 3 shots into its head before it finally stopped struggling. Then he took a deep breath and looked back at me. "You shouldn't be here, Nathan." He looked very upset while he said this. I don't know what to say. My best friend disappears for weeks and I go looking for him and he tells me to get lost. I stood up slowly and walked over to him. Jack, I had no idea what was going on. You haven't called. Did you expect me not to look? Jack looked upset, like he wanted to tell me something, but he couldn't. Then he made eye contact with me and placed a hand on my shoulder. You need to leave, Nathan. It's too dangerous for you here. I doubt that's the only one. Before I could respond, Jack screamed out in pain. A large bony appendage protruded through his chest from behind him, causing him to spit out blood. He was flung into the bar, smashing it on impact. The creature, still alive, looked at me. At least, I think it was. I got a better look at it this time. Its head was smooth with no clear features besides the mouth, and it hunched over, letting its gnarly arms hang forward. On its back were multiple spider-like limbs, which I hadn't seen before. The monster stood over me, at least 7 feet tall in height. I swear it seemed to be getting bigger, like it was evolving. All of this was too much for me to consider on top of the fact that Jack was likely dead. I had no time to mourn, however, as I grabbed the bar stool and swung it towards the creature's head. While mostly futile, it bought me enough time to run a few feet before being stabbed through the leg by one of its appendages. I screamed out in pain, falling over, as yet again the monster loomed over me like a cat toying with its prey. Still, I pathetically attempted to back away. There was no time to think about all the strange things that had led up to this moment. There was no time to ponder this demonic beast that stood over me or where it came from. And there was no time to react as a much larger humanoid beast grabbed the creature by the back of its neck, causing it to shriek in pain. A large, muscular monster with a charcoal black hide and demonic horns stood over the faceless yellow creature, as the sound of bones snapping and popping rang out. The demon breathed heavily, its glowing red pupils staring directly at the now helpless creature. Then in one swift motion, the black beast swung the creature in the air and back down onto the ground, shattering its entire head all at once. The beast then proceeded to start eating it. I quietly crawled to a table, using it to stand myself up and look towards the bar. I had to see if Jack had survived. When I saw Jack's body no longer, I turned back to the larger creature and saw that a wound in its chest had started slowly healing. I limped out of the bar as fast as I could while what I think was once Jack paid me no mind. I made it home and have been resting for a couple of days. My leg is badly wounded, but I was able to stop the bleeding. I'm not sure if I want to leave the house at this point, even if it is to get my leg treated. My friend is out there and he's a monster. I'm not sure what to do from here, but I will try to do some research as I post this. I don't think I'm going to be going out for a while.